I am wearing a very nice and festive shirt. This is my favorite shirt.
Very happy shirt. Chris got this shirt in Mexico.
It's a Pink Panther. It's yellow. It's very bright. Typically, I wear all black, but today I'm feeling very joyful and spontaneous.
Pink Panther went to Hawaii. But speaking of joyful, today's guest is very joyful. And I feel like that's the best word to describe him because he's very fun, very charismatic. He's very contagious. If you don't know who he is, his name's Carlos Whittaker. He is Low Swit on Instagram. He's huge on Instagram. That is where he shares the most random and sometimes epic, but oftentimes it's a bird in his backyard kind of moments of life. And it's so engaging.
You're watching it and you're like, why am I watching this bird? Or why am I watching this guy farm bees? And you just keep watching, and then you find out that he knows so many interesting people, or he meets so many interesting people, but they're just normal, everyday people.
Yes, he shares life, and he's a great storyteller. He's a podcaster, author, speaker, musician. I think that's just about everything. I'm sure he's way more than that, but that's how people know him. He is just this joyful, full of life and hope kind of person who just has so much wisdom to share, so much hope to share with us. And today's conversation, we talk about social media and limiting social media, but also sharing on social media, trying to find that balance, sharing on social media when you have kids or traveling when you have kids, and instilling these values in your kids now. Because he's in a season of life that we are not in, where he has kids who are in high school and college and beyond now. And their kids grew up with social media. It's just so fascinating.
One of his very first videos went viral about his kids, and this was before YouTube was only 4 months old, and he ended up on every morning talk show in America. So he knows a thing about going viral and how to handle that with your family.
Yeah, and we talk a little bit about Chris has dubbed him, Mr. Rogers. Like, he is like Nashville's version of Mr. Rogers, genuinely. Like, I mean, everybody's a friend, and people refer to him as their friend, even if they've never met in person, because he's so good at sharing and making life relatable. So I don't want to give away any more of the episode. So this is our conversation with Carlos Whittaker.
Oh, but before we go, not to beg, but we really just have a request. If you could just review the show, like leave a nice iTunes review, that would be amazing.
Leave it honest. You don't have to convince them to leave nice.
Well,
just
they can
honest.
still be nice.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, let's just get to it. Hello.
Hello, my friends. You don't look like you're in a vehicle. I don't even know what to call the thing you live in. So I just said vehicle.
We think truck sounds cooler than RV.
Oh,
I don't know.
Truck. You don't look like you're in a truck.
Our new truck is like, it's just sketchy enough to where people start pulling their kids a little closer in,
It definitely gives off creepy vibe.
A little bit.
I love it.
We love it.
Carlos, I can't even say your name correctly because you say it in a way that you say it to your audience, and I sound very white when I say it. So can you just go ahead and say your name, how you would introduce yourself?
Sure, but before I do that, I do want to say that for some reason, Chris, you have like one of my favorite voices, or accent is the wrong word. Like, just the way you talk is like, I love it. So I can't even describe what it is. So I actually really appreciate the way you say my name. So can you just say it again before I say it?
Carlos.
Okay, yeah.
Carlos.
See, I appreciate it.
Low Swit. People tell me that I sound like Owen Wilson.
He does.
Maybe that. Yeah, it's this like, you're just like everyone's buddy. Is kind of like what it feels like. It sounds like you're everyone's buddy. My full name is Carlos Enrique Whittaker Guzman Chibol Cabello, which is 6 names.
So much cooler.
But no, I kind of like it when Chris Owen says it.
Chris Owen.
Man, what a cool name. That's so much cooler than
Chris
Sarah
Owen.
Bethany.
Yeah.
Chris
What a
Owen.
cool name.
Carlos, we're so happy that you're here, and we go back a long ways. Like, we've been friends for a long time, and I feel like I mean, for people who don't know you, you're an author, you're a speaker, you were a recording musician at one point. I feel like your life is just so completely random. Like, you're a bird watcher, you're a fly fisher.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, if you could give us a
Oh,
beekeeper.
beekeeping now too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, you guys have a little homestead up there in
Oh,
Nashville.
We do.
I want to come see
Don't
it.
get too close to my bees, or they'll come out and get you.
Oh gosh, my nightmare.
So if you were to give us an elevator pitch on who you are and what you do, like the quick 30 seconds, like what would that be?
I feel like Chris and Sarah that I've probably paid $10,000 for somebody to help me try to figure out what this 30-second elevator pitch is, because I just don't know. Like it's like what is it? What is it that I do? I think when I take a real big step backwards and I look at the people that maybe are impacted by what it is I'm doing on any given day, it's like I'm a word giver to people that may be looking for words. I get that more than anything. Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. I've been trying to that's exactly how I feel, and I've been trying to come up with a way to say it, but I haven't been able to say it. And so whether that be in like difficult conversations, whether that be in like a way to show somebody that they love them, whether it be, like it's like I just try to help people navigate life. And that's why I show all facets of my life, right? I'm not just like the business guy and I'm going to help you in this niche area trying to, whatever. It's the entire spectrum. I show my life so that people don't feel alone and people feel like, wow, there's somebody that is struggling like I am, and look at how he's navigating it. So maybe I'm going to give it a shot like that. There's somebody that has found some success. Maybe I'm going to try to find success in the way that he's found success there. And so like, I just love to share my entire life, whether it be through books, telling stories, whether it be on stages, whether it be on Instagram. Probably most of the time, 90% of my time, I'm telling stories on Instagram. I'm a storyteller that's trying to help people tell their stories better, I guess, and maybe live their stories better. So
I love that.
How's that for an elevator pitch? Is that a good elevator pitch?
That was good.
Okay.
I'm trying to decide which direction to go here.
Yeah.
You've got so many things happening.
Yeah, like you're this, like here's Carlos, and then you just,
Yeah.
and we admire that very, very much.
I love
because we oftentimes we get like pigeonholed in a niche,
Niche down,
and I'm
niche
sure
down.
you have too. It's
Yeah.
like, but I'm more than just
Yeah.
a beekeeper. I'm more than just a speaker. I'm more than this, and then more than just a traveler or whatever.
Yep.
And so like with that, like how is it that you're able to tell stories about the most like mundane things? Because we would look at our normal life, like we get back to Chattanooga, Tennessee. We love it here. It's great, but like it's normal.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to document that. We're just like, oh, we're just going to Trader Joe's today. Oh, we're just doing this. But you, on the other hand, I mean, you're traveling a lot.
Yeah.
You go to these cool places and then you come back home to Nashville and you're still documenting
Right.
like about a blue jay,
Right.
in your backyard, and
Yeah.
people, like thousands of people are watching
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do it in an interesting way. It's not just like, look at this blue jay.
Sure.
Like you tell the story from slide to slide on Instagram. It's
Yeah.
so good.
So how do you do that? Like, how do you make every part of your life seem interesting?
Is your life more interesting than ours?
No, because it's not like I do tell people this a lot. What I try to do is, in every story I tell, I try to find something that everybody can root for, whether that be the blue jay, whether that be me trying to change the muffler in my truck, whether that, like, I always try to find who is the thing, or what is the thing in this story that everyone needs to root for, and I make it all about that thing, right? Whether it could be the butterfly that that I found in my front yard, and we're trying to rescue the butterfly, and then the butterfly flies away, and then the neighbor's dog, I'm filming it, is like chasing the butterfly, and then and then of course I use music to, like, that is my version of manipulating emotions. Like, I will use music to the T, right? Like, I am like, I score everything, I really do. Like, it could be, you're right, like the most mundane thing, and I'm on Soundstripe trying to find the exact cinematic, score for this moment of me, whatever it may be. And so, I find something for everybody to root for. And I like to, I think people, they've grown accustomed to me sharing everything, that I feel like I am trying to not be just a highlight reel on my Instagram of all the coolest things that I've done. People are if they're gonna follow me, they're gonna have to get the boring stuff too, me mowing my grass, whatever it is. And I think people are just used to that now. And so what that's done is it's created a intimacy between those that follow me and myself. That's probably you're not going to get if you're just following people that are just showing highlight reels, right? So if you're following somebody, and I follow a lot of those people where it's just the glorious things in their life, that's really fun to watch and it's cool, but I don't feel close to them. But the people I feel close to, right? Like we, when you go back and you look at Casey Neistat's first vlogs, and he was doing it every single day. Yeah, he was making the mundane seem, he was scoring the mundane. He was doing all the things, and suddenly, I felt when I finally met him, I was like, I'm meeting my friend Casey, right? Like because he's my friend, and so I feel like that's what's happened because people will introduce me as, I'll legitimately go to a conference and they'll get a book signed and they'll turn to their friend and go, "This is my friend Carlos," and they literally say, "My friend Carlos."
I love that.
And so they don't even think twice. I don't correct them because I've never met them in my entire life, but they are like, "This is my friend." Why am I their friend? Because they've seen the good, the boring, the exciting, the bad, all the pieces that you would normally see with a friend. And so I think that's why it works. I think that's why it works.
I love that they can call you their friend.
Yeah.
But that kind of raises a different question though. Where's the boundary for you? How much do you share and not share? Because I know that you, like you said, you share everything, but from a mental health side of things, where do you draw that line? Because I feel like that's something we're always struggling with. It's like, how much do we share? How much do we not?
Yeah.
And deciding what to keep private. How do you decide that?
Yeah. They think I share everything, like they but the truth is I don't, right? So they're like, "This is my best friend Carlos. I know everything about his life. I know that his dad has dementia, and I know that he bought the house across the street to move his parents into, and I know all these amazing things that are happening." But that's what I choose to share, right? Like they're still only getting 5 minutes, maybe 10 on some days of my life, and so there are things that as my kids have gotten older, I don't share near as much about my kids as I used to. That's a conversation that I have with people all the time. Is like, I actually wish I probably would have shared less when they were younger. And those are conversations I have with my kids now. Like, I've had to look at my kids in the eye and be like, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry that I shared that part of, when you were 7 or whatever. I probably shouldn't have done that. Would you like me to delete it?" There's just conversations that I think we need to be having constantly. Just looking at the ethics of what we're sharing, looking at the ethics of how we're sharing other people's stories. I've made I've raised a lot of money on my Instagram for people in need. And the way I share their stories now when I ask for money is different than the way I shared it 2 years ago when I started asking for money. So I think we just have to constantly evaluate what is it we're sharing, why are we sharing it, there are things that you shouldn't be sharing. There are things that I will never share. My daughter's getting married in May, and they, it was so funny because they hired a photographer, and I was like, "So who's gonna do video?" And clear as day, my daughter looks at me. She's like, "We're not hiring a videographer. Like you're just gonna, you're gonna have your phone. Like you're just gonna do what you always do." And I looked at her, and I was like, "Hey,
funny.
Look, babe, I am not going to be Insta-storying your wedding. Like, I want to be your dad. Like, I just want to be there, right?" And so, I have to make decisions and draw lines in the sand that look no, I'm not just going to live stream your wedding to 300,000 people,
Well, that's where her brain went, though. She's like, "Dad's got it."
She's like, "Dad's got it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I talked to my wife. She's like, and Heather was even like, "Well, yeah, you'll be taking videos." So I was like, I do not want to take one video that day. So again, it's just people's expectations. You have to draw a line. You have to know where it is you want to experience the moment instead of capturing the moment. And I'm having to have more and more of those conversations with myself and other people.
No, we get that. And we're always, so we don't have the kids. We don't have kids to always have to think about, how it affects their lives.
Are you asking Kramer, are you looking him in the eyes and being like, "Hey,
we just fully exploit him.
That
that
is one person we would exploit all day long.
Yeah, he knows. He's why half our audience is here.
Yeah.
But always having to like reevaluate how we're sharing something and making sure that we're giving people dignity. And that's always where we come back to, of like, when you ask for money, how are you giving them dignity? How are you sharing their story? And I've definitely seen the progression of how you first started out and how you're doing it now, and how you find ways to, show them as human. Which isn't, human hope is sort of the same idea. So, I don't really know what my question is in that, but I really love the reminder of having to constantly reevaluate it.
And for context, like for people who have no idea who you are, one major thing that you have gained a lot of attention for is finding these random people or strangers, and you've been raising money for them. Like you're walking through the Atlanta airport and you strike up a conversation with the pianist and you get to know his story, and then you raise an ungodly amount of money.
But not in a way that it's exploiting them or giving praise to yourself. Like there's a really fine line, and you've done a great job balancing that line.
Here's the thing: is like you can tell when someone's crossed the line, right? Like you can. There are accounts that are honestly, like I call them like giving porn is what I do. Like they're exploiting homeless people. They're like and then there's no relationship afterwards. And so like I'm like every single person we've raised money for, I make sure. That's why I don't do it like it hasn't become just like a raise money and give it away account. There are accounts that's their whole purpose. But I want to maintain relationship with every single person that we've impacted, and I want to check in on them. And I did it for a bunch of Waffle House employees, and I still go visit Stacy at the Mount Juliet. She's the manager, and whenever I'm in town, I go check in on her. Like, how's it going? And I just want to make sure that we're constantly giving them dignity and making sure that they're human. And here's the thing too. Like, I've had to even change the way that I do give money to even strangers, right? Like one thing that I've had to learn is like when we raised money at the Atlanta airport for these workers, who I'm still in relationship with all of them. But when I raised all the money, I think we raised like $120,000 for the three of them.
Holy cow.
I was like, hey, so do you have a Venmo? And none of them had Venmo. None of them had Cash App. None of them had a smartphone smart enough to even download Venmo or Cash App. None of them had a checking account. They would just take their checks from the Atlanta airport, walk to a check casting place, and then suddenly I started realizing, wow, there's like systems that keep them from even being able to get the money that I've raised for them. And then how do I make sure that they take the money and they use it for something that they say they want to use it for? So I had to find them like financial coaches, and there's just way more than I think. I think we just have to be thinking way bigger when we do these things and we share these stories, in order to give people the dignity that they deserve. And so, it's been a process. It's been a growing thing. And I love it. I love doing it, but I want to make sure that I do it well.
Well, I think there's no perfect way to do it. I mean, we can look back at some of the stories that we've shared and I'm like, oh, like it's so cringy. Sometimes I'm like, I should have done this differently. I didn't treat them, but we're always learning and growing from that. And I think that's the best you can do.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so you on your platform and in everything that you do, I feel like you are a weird Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Like you're
we have called you that actually.
Like you're just
National
like
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, you're like a good neighbor, and but it doesn't feel like you're doing that for your sake. It's just genuinely like who you are as a person. And it's really interesting being able to travel. Let's just ask this.
Yeah.
Like you travel all the time.
Yeah.
Like how do you talk to these people? How do you even find somebody to be a good neighbor to?
Yeah, that's a great. I love the Mr. Rogers thing because people have said that to me. They're like, "You're the Mr. Rogers for grown-ups," and
need a cardigan.
And actually, I'm halfway through editing a reel on 5 things adults can learn from the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood Show. So you're that on it, guys.
We're cutting edge.
You're cutting edge. You're cutting it, bleeding edge. I think as I travel, I'm looking for the people that are either invisible and you can see them all around you. They're either invisible or they're, they've been knocked down and people are just walking over them kind of deal. So that's what I look for every single day. I'm like, who needs to be seen today? That's how I found the piano guy, right? Like I hear him playing the piano, I turn over to him, he's got $15 in his tip jar, and 99% of the people around him are looking at their phone. And I was like, this guy's giving a concert of a lifetime, and he's invisible. And so I'm just constantly looking. On the way, my flight 2 days ago from Portland here, I am in line. I pay for all the TSAs, the clears. That I try to make that experience as minimal as possible, painful as possible. And so why is it painful? Because we got to wait in line. Everyone's grumpy, and everyone in between, whoever you are as a traveler, and your gate is just in the way, right? They're just in the way of you getting to where you want to go. So who is that? Those are the TSA agents. They're in the way. They're not shiny, happy people. They weren't hired to make you feel good about life. That they weren't hired to be your Mr. Rogers at 6 a.m. And so I see them, and I just think I can't even fathom the amount of pain and gruff and attitude they get all day. So every single TSA agent, I say their name, officer, whatever, Santos, thank you so much. Like I look them in the eyes, I say their name. I'm telling you 9 out of 10 times, when I say their name, they kind of look at me like, and they just smile, and wow. Who knows what just saying their name will do. And so, I'm like, they're invisible to people. People just want to get by them. Who are the invisible people? That's why when I raise money for the food court workers in Atlanta, everyone's, eating their food. They're coming around. No one's saying thank you. No. So I'm just looking for people that need to be seen. And I see them. And you don't have to raise $130,000, right? Just say their name. And watch something shift in their day. Watch some dignity maybe come back up. Like somebody said, if they have their first name, say that, thank you, Amber, for whatever it is, at Wendy's, my milkshake. Say their name, and there's just some dignity that rises up. So you're right. Like there's something intrinsically in me that just wants to see people that are unseen. It's probably because I felt unseen for a very long time, and I've had people see me. And so, yeah, I love to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's such an easy way to connect with somebody and remind them that they are seen. It's just their first name. Most people are wearing that name tag.
Yes.
You're right. I can think of times when people have done that to me too. They're like, thank you, Sarah. Like if I have a name tag, I'm like, wow, they called me by name.
Right.
Like, there's something really special about that. What
Absolutely.
a great, easy, free, and we may not always have money to give to somebody, but
Right.
you can take a second and say their name.
Absolutely.
It's so special. I love that.
I think I know where it started for you.
Okay.
This whole cause. It was at Disneyland, and it was when you were Eeyore.
Yes, that was it. That was it. And people. Let me tell you the actually. So hold on. According to my work papers at Disneyland, I was a friend of Eeyore. FYI, like I wasn't Eeyore. I was a friend of Eeyore, which is.
Oh, I thought you were Eeyore.
Well, I was a friend of Eeyore, which is what you're supposed to say when you are inside of a very hot costume. So for kids, for little boys and girls that are listening to the podcast right now, Carlos was a friend of Eeyore. And so when I was the friend of Eeyore, I don't want to get sued by the Disney company. This is funny because this is actually really funny. So this was out of college. Maybe this was like 98 or something like that. I'm working at Disneyland. And I'm fully expecting to be a friend of Tigger, right? I'm like, this is like, I've got energy. Like I do the audition, and I can't even believe like I made it through the audition, and I get hired, and then they cast me as Eeyore, as a friend of Eeyore, and I'm so depressed. I'm like, this is horrible. So when I'm in like Pooh Town or whatever it was, Pooh Town. It's probably not what it was called. When I'm hanging out with Pooh and Tigger. Can I tell you the lines of people that were in line and kids to see Pooh, and then the lines of people, well, all three of us would be out there. It'd be Pooh, Tigger, and me. That would be there for Tigger. And I'm telling you, it was like only the depressed kids that were like, coming and getting in line with me. And it was barely even them, And there was like 3 people in line for me and like 100 in line for them. And I just didn't feel seen. So Chris, you're absolutely right. What my time is Eeyore is the thing that made me want to see invisible donkeys.
Oh, so you were sitting there roasting in that costume
Just
in
roasting
California.
and for nothing. Nobody wanted to, they would always come to me when the line for Whittaker was too long. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad.
It wasn't like
somebody's got to do it.
It wasn't like you had to get in character. You were already
no,
living the moment.
I was already hunchbacked. I was already like crying. It was just miserable. Woe is me.
Woe is me. How long did you do that?
I did it for 4 months. And I got in trouble the first week because I had a supervisor come to me with a little autograph book, like a kid's autograph book, and they go, "Is this you?" And I looked and I was like, "Yeah, that's the way I signed it." And I didn't spell Eeyore with 2 E's. I only spelled it with 1 for an entire week. So I was ruining kids, ruining kids' lives.
Funny.
That's probably going for a lot lot now, on eBay. Yeah,
It's a rare one Eeyore.
rare
with
one.
one. So listen, if you were a kid in the late 90s and you went to Disneyland and got your book signed by Eeyore, just see if it was 1 E, and that would have been me.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
Oh, that is really
man.
funny. Carlos, we could go anywhere in this conversation because your life lends itself to that way. But I feel like we've talked about seeing people and being intentional with people who feel invisible. But what keeps you going? Why do you feel so motivated to be this contagious personality of or being positive or showing why do you do it?
I see so many invisible people every day in my DMs, on my phone, people that just don't feel seen. And I know I can't see everybody, and I know that's going to be impossible, but what I've seen is the power of community to see people is so much greater than the power of seeing somebody alone. And so if I can pull out my phone and help somebody feel seen, that has felt invisible for a long time, it is addicting. It is something that I think we were created as humans to have a great addiction to, is rescuing. I say in my last book that humans have a reflex of rescue. We think that we don't have a reflex of rescue, but if you dig down deep enough, it's literally there inside of all of us. We look at society right now, and you think about just the polarization and the disconnect and the division that we see. And I'll tell people all the time, people say we're more divided than we've ever been, and I'm like, no, we're not. I know you just read the history books. Okay. We're not more divided than we've ever been. We just have more access to other people's opinions than we've ever had before. So it feels like we're more divided, but we're actually not. So if that's the truth, then how is it, and this is something that I do love to do, how is it that we can see people that are actually nothing like us, that are vehemently opposed to the way that we look at the world, people that dehumanize other people? How can we see them? Because there's a reason they're dehumanizing other people, probably because they've been dehumanized themselves. And so just trying to get people to look through this lens that every single person, it could be the quietest, shyest person that you can imagine, needs to be seen. But also, can I tell you something? The amount of CEOs and very well-off people that have millions of followers, maybe even influencers, they actually need to be seen too. And so everybody has this innate desire to be seen. And so that's what keeps me going. What keeps me going is knowing that the work's never going to be done. I'm going to continue to have to not only see people myself, but teach people how to see people. And again, it's fun.
I like that. So you've talked a lot about how you bring value to other people's lives and also how you continue to be inspired to share about their lives. But let's jump back way first book, Carlos, to Moment Maker.
Yeah.
Can we just talk a little bit about that and making moments out of life? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just share. I mean, you've got how many books now? 4, 5?
I'm working on the 5th.
Working on the 5th.
I'm working on the 5th. And actually, I just finished the 6th, but it's a kid's book. So I've got a kid's book coming out in March.
Gosh.
So
cool.
So lots of books. I got lots of books. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning because I feel like, especially your first 3 books, they kind of lean one into the next, next. So let's start with the Moment Maker because I think that's when we first really found you, was your book. I remember actually Chris buying it for us. Yeah, a long time ago. But just it always sits with us as far as making moments out of things that may not be what it may not be Instagram worthy or may not seem.
Sure.
Could you just talk a little bit about like how that started for you and what that looks like.
I love that because that book came out, I feel like, before Instagram.
Yeah.
Like it was like, hey, you can make moments without having to post it. It's amazing. But I think for me, Moment Maker. What was the subtitle? Oh yeah, it was "You Can Live Your Life or Your Life Will Live You." And I remember I heard that from I think a pastor, Matt Chandler, maybe said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. You can either, there's so many people that are letting their life live them and not in charge of the moments of their lives, or you can be in charge of it and start creating moments. And so, that book really came from when my kids were really little. And Heather she's the one, my wife. She's the one that even to this day is the one that is planning these crazy trips that we are going on. That anything you ever see cool that I do on my literally anything that you see, it is not me. It was not my idea. I did not want to hike through the jungle to find an ape at the top of a mountain and feed it peanuts like that. No, that wasn't. That was my wife's idea. So she is the moment maker, and I think that what's been cool is it's really dripped down into my kids, and so to watch my kids become young adults now and become little mini moment makers. They're living their lives. They're not wasting any opportunity. I mean, here's the thing, like we all have an expiration date. I know this is depressing to talk about, but we don't know when it is. We all want to imagine that it's going to be when we're 97 and, and it's like, oh, we're going to fall asleep, whatever. No, like we don't know. And so like, if you're listening to this right now, I just get fired up. Like you've got an opportunity to really impact somebody or just create moments just to make your life feel like an exhale, yeah. So, I loved that book. I loved talking about it. I loved, giving people, but that was 2014, I think, which is crazy.
Really?
Giving people reason to wake up every day and to just kind of charge out the door and, and make moments. And again, the moments don't have to be these crazy hike through the jungle moments. Like every single day, if you're, I tell people all the time, if you're a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad and you've got, just kids running around constantly and you're thinking, oh, well, what in the world? Like, I don't have any time to, oh my gosh, you have so many moments that you can make with them. You have so many things you can do. And so, the moment making thing probably was the catalyst for a lot of the things that I'm doing now. I'm just making them in different ways.
Yeah. So one common theme that keeps coming back in a lot of our episodes lately is that point of entry. And for a lot of there's that theme of travel in most of our episodes where people a lot of times think it has to be something crazy big to make it an experience. It has to be Instagram worthy. But that moment maker idea of just start with where you're at. Like there's always that opportunity to have that memorable moment.
Oh my gosh.
That's the point of entry. And I love that reoccurring thing.
Well, and what I love about that is when, we have, if you look at my Instagram highlights, we've been all over the planet and just even in the last 12 months, right? Like Rwanda and France, south of France and all these places. And so people are like, yeah, you guys just travel everywhere. Well, you know what? Like that was not the case up until 5 years ago when I finally, in my mid 40s, had enough money to take my kids on vacations overseas. So you know what we would do? Like we would take trips that were 45 minutes away from our house in Riverside, California. Like that was our point of entry for travel. We used to play this game where we would roll a dice and the dice was whatever the dice would land on. If it was 15, we would drive 15 miles. If it was 43, we would drive 43 miles. And then we would have the kids stick their hand in a jar and it said north, south, east, or west. And they would pull it out and we would drive 43 miles east. And we were we were broke, but we were so excited about, okay, we're going east, where we would end up. We would never know. It could be a strip mall in the middle of Palm Desert, and it's like, this is where we were meant to be here. And we would just have so much fun, right? And so I just tell people, like, I love that, Sarah. Like, the point of entry is so small. Like, you don't have to have this huge point of entry. No, wherever you're at, you can start doing it now.
I love that. And I love that you're doing it with kids. I mean, that's one thing that Chris and I, we can't really speak to at all just because we don't have kids.
Sure.
But a lot of people who do listen to us do have kids.
Yeah.
And seeing that you guys are doing it from even, strict budget all the way up to you have the money to go to the south of France now. Like finding that point of entry no matter where you're at and then taking the kids along for the ride and helping them make memories in their lives early on, not missing those opportunities. It's just so cool. And your kids, I don't think I've ever actually met your kids, but they seem like really cool, solid kids.
they are the one caveat, not caveat, the one warning I would heed parents with having your kids be travelers when they're young. Again, be travelers, whether it be 45 minutes or whatever, and putting that adventurous spirits into them is just know that when they turn 18, they're going to keep going and they're going to leave you and they're going to, my daughters moved to France for a few months. And, so they were there at the beginning of this year. They moved there from January to March, I think. And it was the first time we'd all been apart from each other, but they were like, no, this is what you've instilled in us. And so they saved their money, got an Airbnb and traveled Europe for, and so it's been so cool to watch what's caught rather than taught, and that's really what's happened with our kids. So yeah, kids are watching, drag them around.
That is so cool. I love that.
That is really cool. So the more that you travel and the more that you are successful, do you feel, has it become harder for you to share about your successful moments because it can be kind of unrelatable to people at the starting point?
I do kind of feel that because I've always been, Chris has helped me for a lot of years in my bootstrapping solopreneur life, right? Like it's just been me and Chris, and it's like, Chris, can you, I'm like filming fitness videos on my webcam on my laptop, doing burpees, and Chris is like, hey bro, can I help you with these things? Like, I was doing like fitness courses like that. And so I've been like the bootstrap solopreneur guy, right? And everyone's just super relatable. And yeah, to be honest, like, I've got like full management team now, and like, I've got people doing things for me. And it does feel, I want to constantly make sure that I keep remaining, a man of the people. And actually this has been a point of contention in my career, to be honest with you, is that I so much don't want to lose that I probably have turned down a lot of money or opportunity because I'm like, it's just unrelatable. And I don't know if I can do that. And so yeah, like it's actually even affected, I probably could be living in a different house than I, am right now had I just sold out's the wrong word because there's a lot of people that make that choice and they do it, but I just won't there's never been an Instagram ad on my Instagram. I try to just keep that's the purest place I can be, right? And so like I've had so many opportunities to make a whole lot of money, and I'm just not going to do it. Like they're going to sniff that a mile away, and I've spent too long building trust with this platform. And the reason why I can raise so much money is because I'm completely transparent in every dollar that's given, and nobody's seeing me buy new cars and all these things. And so like I feel like I've worked so hard to build this trust that I just don't want to screw it up. And so it has been, not that I'm not going to buy a new truck, okay? So not that stuff's not going to happen, but I am very careful to make sure that that the trust is still there and that I'm making decisions honestly for this community that I've built, and to make sure that that's at the forefront, because my Insta Familia, they're the ones that book me for these speaking events. They're the ones that, like I know that I do get income from them. They buy my books, like all these things, but there's just some things that I won't do yet, and I haven't done. And so can't even remember necessarily the origin of that question, but just making sure that I stay as much as I can as relatable to them, I
like that.
Yeah, that's a hard balance. I mean, we're definitely not quite to where you're at, but we definitely feel that pull of like people, I don't know, that standard of what's relatable is always going to change for different people, and having to learn that, because we both grew up on like real tight budget kind of things. And so anything, it just, balancing how that is perceived by the world is hard, but at the end of the day, it's your life. And finding that balance is really hard.
Yeah.
But man, okay. What else do you want to do with this conversation? Because we don't want to take up too much time here.
I know. What, do you have something?
I always have questions, but I definitely I really would love to lean into like the whole family side of things, just because you do have that. And I don't think we've really talked to any families on this podcast.
Not yet, no.
So you refer to it as your Insta Familia, your Instagram, which my Spanish accent is terrible, but
Insta Familia.
I cannot speak Spanish for the life of me, try as I might. But let's talk about is it okay if we talk about your family, or how much do
Absolutely.
you share? Okay, because I'm always interested in, like, you have social media, you're huge on social media, you're sharing it. How do your kids feel about it? How have you instilled boundaries in them? Because your kids grew up in the generation of social media. Like, we were on the cusp of it. We got it more, high school, college kind of thing.
I mean, one of your very first videos went viral,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, this is before like viral was a viral thing.
YouTube
really,
was 4 months old when this thing went viral on YouTube.
that's
Oh
insane.
my gosh. Which video was it?
Single ladies devastation.
That's right.
Yep.
I know.
And most people listening, they probably remember or seeing that video and then have totally forgotten about it.
Right.
And now they're remembering it now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it has been it's been a journey with my kids. Like I said, I've stopped sharing as much, especially when they got into like the tween years. I was like, you know what, like this is their life, and so I would ask them, hey, can I share this, or can I? And honestly, 80% of the time it was no, Dad, like don't want you to share that. And they've also seen the, we talk about Moment Maker, but there's a next book called Kill the Spider where it talks about my life falling apart. And a lot of that was because my identity was placed in other people's values and opinions of who I was, whether it be on social media or my blog back then, whatever it was. And so they've seen the dangers also of believing your own hype. They've seen the dangers. They've not only seen it, they've lived through their father having to find healing because of social media. And so I think that as far as parenting, one of the things we decided to do early on that I tell parents all the time, especially with social media and things like that, is to make sure that your kids. You can't tell your kids to do something that you're not doing yourself. Like you can't, like the times I would be like, get off your phone to like Sohail and Sayana while I'm like literally just scrolling, it's like, can you imagine, like don't drink while I'm just taking shots of vodka, like right in front of them, it's like, we have to remember that, that, and also that it's not about them not using it. If you're going to parent them, actually have them use it, but teach them how to use it responsibly, teach them how to use it well. And they've also seen that. They've seen the good that's come. Like my kids are, every time I do a giving blitz, man, they're like all of them at home. They've, since a couple of them, or one, Santa's moved out and whatever, but like if they do a giving blitz, they all end up in my living room, like, okay, Dad, where are you at now? Like, what's it at now? Like, they've seen the good that comes from it as well. And so, I actually have a podcast episode. Maybe I can find it, and you guys can link it. But I have a podcast episode where, because that video of Single Ladies Devastation went viral when Losai was like 2 years old, right? He's crying because I told him he can't be a single lady, and it goes viral when he's singing Beyonce's All the Single Ladies. Well, you know what? I literally looked at him during this podcast with tears in my eyes and said, buddy, I didn't ask you what you thought about me posting that. And I can imagine maybe that was embarrassing. And I let him unpack. Yeah, he really didn't like that everyone that talked to him was like, hey, that's a single lady. That's a little single, and so like, I literally with tears in my eyes, like apologized to him on my podcast, and he forgave me. And those are things we need to think about as parents now. Like, what are some things that you shared about your kids that maybe you need to delete? Maybe you need to apologize to them for. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, and allow them to feel like, wow, like, again, this is back to being seen. My parents actually see me. They've seen me for so I've had to have difficult conversations because of social media. Because it's funny now though that he's 16, 17, and the girls have found that video, and he's like, hey, yeah, you can share that video, because they're like, they think it's the coolest thing ever, so just okay. I'm like, now I'll put it back on, I just think that you just have to do it on purpose. If you're not doing it on purpose with your kids, you're gonna accidentally wound them. And so, you're going to do that already. So go ahead and purposely protect them, purposely let them feel seen. And I think that's really, we're living in the Wild West when it comes, all this is brand new. Like the rules are being written as we're, as we're living these social media lives. So just try to do it with as much integrity as possible, as much humanization as possible, not only for people that you're telling stories about that you're not related to, but to, for your kids as well. So, I look at my kids now, and Lasiah still doesn't have Instagram. The girls do, but they're very, they don't share. There's a generational gap here where they don't share like I share. Like, they're like, Dad, 40 slides a day is definitely a 50-year-old problem. Like that's what 40s and 50s do, they're like, if they share something, it's so weird. We were just in Montana for like 7 days, fly fishing. It was the most epic. I'm like sharing everything, posting it. Sayana maybe posted one 7-second video of like water flowing under her waders with no sound. And that was it. It was just like 7 seconds, no sound, and with like a little emoji in the corner. And I was like, what was that? Like, and I literally asked her, I was like, hey, babe, like, I think you accidentally posted something with no sound, like on your, she's like, oh no, I did that on purpose. I was like, you did? So anyway, they do things differently than we do. But I guess at the very bottom of this ladder I'm climbing down to try to get to a point, it's make sure that their identity isn't being manipulated by social media, whether that's by you or by them. Make sure that their identity is not rooted in that.
That's good. Yeah, we see, and like I said, we can't speak to it personally because we don't have kids. So like we try not to like look too closely at it, but we do see everything, especially in the travel industry of just parents using kids and that kind of thing. Yeah. It's hard. Honestly, it's hard to see sometimes. I'm like, are we exploiting our dog? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to see sometimes, but I know that just from like we're on the outside. Like, I don't know your kids, but they all have a strong identity, it seems like, outside of social media. And I think that's something's been done right. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. And you speak about the like Wild West, and is there a point in your life where you will put down the phone and like walk off into the sunset and never exist online?
I love this question. I love this question because I actually think about this question every week. Like that is
me too.
I'm like, is this it? This may be it. Like this especially when I don't, if I take 3 or 4 days off, and I'm not, and I haven't shared anything, and I'm like, maybe it can be 5 days, maybe it can be 7, maybe. But then I look on my calendar, and management team has like, I have social calendars now, and it's like, nope, today you're posting about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I hope there is going to be a day that happens. And I hope when it happens, I enjoy when it happens. Right now, there's desires for it every once in a while, but I also really still enjoy sharing. And so I just don't ever want to not enjoy sharing. And here's a little sneak peek for your listeners. I'm starting to give some sneak peeks to this that my publisher's not necessarily asking me to give sneak peeks yet, but my next book, and I think I told you, Chris, what I did for my next book. Maybe not.
No. No.
Okay. So last year, in late July, I put up a post saying, "Hey guys, I'm going to take a break from social media. I'm not going to be around," and I'd never done this before, so I was like, "I'm going to take like 4 weeks off or whatever." Well, I didn't reappear for like 11 weeks. And during those 11 weeks, I did an experiment on myself that I'm writing a memoir about. And I went to Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a neuroscientist in LA. And I had him scan my brain the day before I went offline. And I had him scan my brain at 7 hours a day on my phone. That's about how much I was spending creating content and editing and posting and doing all the things. And then I left his office, and my best friend Brian drove me 3.5 hours into the high desert of Southern California. And I got out of his car, and he took my phone, my Apple Watch, my laptop, my iPad, and he dropped me off at a Benedictine monastery for 3 weeks. And I lived with these monks, and I never saw a single screen. So not only was I off social media, like I didn't look at a screen. Like, it was 23 hours a day of silence. It was the most miserable first 4 days of my entire life, and then it became the greatest 2.5 weeks of my entire life. And so I lived this Benedictine monastic life because I wanted to be reminded, like, what was life like before all these things were in our head, and just the beauty of existing and living and noticing, and conversations where nothing ever vibrated in my pocket or my wrist to take my attention. Even if I didn't look at it, if you feel it, you're taken away. So I wanted to remember and recall what it was like to live before this stuff happened. And here's the kicker: after I left the monastery after a few weeks, Heather picked me up, drove me to LAX, and I got on a plane with a paper boarding pass because I still didn't have a phone, and I flew to Cleveland, Ohio, and my friend Leanne picked me up and then drove me 2 hours to Mount Hope, Ohio, which is a small 4-way stop Amish community, and she dropped me off at the Martin Sheep Farm, and I lived for another 3 weeks with the Amish, fully in with no technology, lived with them for 3 weeks. If a sheep were to walk in my basement right now, I could shear that thing in 3 minutes flat. Like I've got I got life skills I didn't know I'd have, right? But so now I'm like 7 weeks, right, with no technology at all, like no screens, haven't seen a screen, don't know what's happening on planet Earth, don't know what's happening anywhere except for what's around me, right? I feel like that's what we were created. That's one of the things I'm writing about. We were only created to know what's in our community, like around us, and really care for that. Then I moved home for another 3 weeks after that with no screens. My family still did Netflix and all their things, but I was like, well, anyone could do this in a monastery or with the Amish, but could I do this in real life? So I lived at home for 3 more weeks. Then I ended up flying back after my entire experience, 11 weeks or so, to Dr. Amen's clinic, and he rescanned my brain, and he redid all the things. And so I'm writing, that's my next book that's coming out next September, is exactly, cool, Chris, what you said, putting my phone down and walking off into the wild blue yonder. And it was the most healing, incredible, weeks of my life. Now, and here's the thing, spoiler alert, I'm not like some digital minimalist now. Like I'm not like back to, Carlos gave it up and he's on his phone an hour a day. No, I'm back to 7. But here's the thing.
Balance.
What the book is going to help people with is, what I did was I was reminded of all the things that we've stopped doing because of and I've just added those things back into my life, and now it's so much fuller, right? Things like noticing, things like savoring, things like moving at 3 miles an hour, things like the table. The average length of a American meal has gone from 60 minutes in like the 60s to 12 minutes. Like we don't even sit around the table anymore. Like all of these things that I was reminded of. So that's what the book is going to be. Just these reminders of getting lost, things that that are very human that we don't do anymore. And I'm excited about it. So there you go. There's a little sneak peek.
I'm so excited about that.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
We took a cross-country road trip this past winter, and I shut my phone off total for 6 weeks, but I sat in the car in the dead of winter there and back across the country with social media.
Wow.
And I looked like a sociopath or psychopath.
I thought something was wrong. She would just stare out the window. I'm like, is everything okay, Sarah?
Stared there all the way across Kansas, just stared.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I know.
I'm like you. It's such a weird balance because I feel like Chris and I are both like introvert, extrovert, where we have those moments of like, I'm just going to leave it all. I'm going to move to Montana. This is it. But then we also really love that side of social media that allows us to connect with people because we're such people.
Absolutely.
But it's that weird balance. But man, I'm excited about that book.
Yeah, too.
Do you have a name for it yet? A title?
I don't. But here, okay. I did take 2 Sony cameras and I self-documented the whole thing. So it's going to end up being, we're going to enter it. I've got a producer working on it right now, film festivals. We're going to do the whole thing. So.
Wow.
Cool.
Awesome. So excited.
Very cool.
Carlos, thank you so much. I feel like that's such a great place to
it
wrap
is.
it up.
Well,
or do you have one more question?
Well, if people want to follow you, if you have one last thing to say, let's just go out with a high note. Yeah. So if you have one last thing to say, and like, where can people follow you and learn more about you?
Yeah. I think that, though you can follow me, Loswhit on Instagram, LOSWHIT. Instagram, same thing on Twitter, but it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde if you follow me on one or the other. So just know I'm really sarcastic and angry on Twitter, and super happy Mr. Rogers on Instagram. And this is actually something that I just this week I just kind of had a big realization that may be helpful for somebody. There's a lot of people that are going through a lot of rough things, these days, and everybody's going through something. And so for me, my dad's going through, the later stages of dementia. I just bought the house across the street for me to move them into. And something, people are always like, Carlos is so difficult. It's so hard. He's forgotten everything. He's forgotten who I am, all these things. But one thing that I want to leave your listeners with is especially for those listeners that maybe have forgotten what joy feels like, and maybe they're just struggling. They're in a pretty dark place of depression, all these things, and they're feeling like, oh, they'll never find it again. One thing that I learned through some dementia specialists that I've spoken to that is so true is my dad has forgotten everything, but you know what he hasn't forgotten? He can still laugh. Like I can still make him laugh. Like I'll tell him a joke, I'll tickle him, literally like go on there, and he'll die laughing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he has not forgotten joy. That is actually something intrinsically inside of us that we will never forget. So for those listeners that are listening right now and may be thinking to themselves, gosh, man, like I don't know, like I don't know if it's in me anymore. I promise you, it is still in there. You just have to dig a little, maybe, to find it. And so, just a reminder to them, or to anybody that that's going through something hard, that joy is still there. If it's in my dad and I can still pull it out of him, then I promise you haven't forgotten it either.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh man, Carlos, thank you so much. We're going to link everything in the description so people can find you, follow along, and see what's next.
You guys are the best.
Good talking to you.
Yep, you too.
Thanks for listening to What No One Tells You with Chris and Sara. If you have a comment or question that you want answered on the air, be sure to send us a message to hello@chrisandsara.com, or you can call or text our phone number at 423-825-9572. Thanks for listening.